All right, good morning, New West Summit. Thanks for being here and thanks for having us. My name is Lauren Frazier and I'll be moderating our distinguished panel this morning. I've been in the cannabis space for the last 5 years and for the last 3 years kind of in the distribution segment specialization. I started a distribution company in 2015 and currently I sit as the executive director for the Cannabis Distribution Association. So it's really amazing to me to see kind of everything that has changed just in that short period of time and the rapid pace of change that continues to occur in our industry. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about this morning, discussing that changing landscape and how distribution plays a role today and how that might shift in the future. So I'm honored to be up here on stage with an incredible lineup of panelists who have been operating distribution and technology companies in the space. So I will allow each of the panelists to introduce yourself, give a little background on you, on your company, your business model, and kind of how you're uniquely positioned. Because there's so many different distribution models, and we want to really hear that differentiation. So Colin, we'll start with you.
Hello. My name's Colin Lamb. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Indus Holding Company, or Indus Distribution. Been in the industry since 2014 when I was the first business hire at Ease. After Ease, I joined Indus. We started out as an edible company with 2 brands, then pivoted quickly to be 14 brands in distribution and a vertical operation. We can go into business model, I guess, after that.
Sure. My name is Felipe Recalde. I'm the co-founder of Rise Logistics and now work part of Dionymed Holdings. I started in cannabis, I guess, half my life ago. And I've dedicated my time to not only building technology for I guess, our clients and customers, but also working on legislation and regulations.
Hi, my name is Tim Conder. I'm the CEO of Blackbird. We say that Blackbird is a customer service company that provides software and services for every touch point in the supply chain, specifically focusing on distribution and transportation. We currently operate in Nevada and in California and are just expanding into Massachusetts as well.
So we have one more panelist who's on his way, Azam, with Distru. So when he gets here, we'll either dive right into the questions or we'll let him introduce himself. But I really want you guys to expand a little bit more on your background and how you got to, coming up with the business model that you have arrived at today and the services that you're offering today, how that maybe has evolved over the past couple years. So whoever wants to start.
I'll take that one. So my background is in transportation. I worked as a bicycle messenger in San Francisco for 5 years and then had the thesis that a bicycle messenger service would do well in a third market city like Reno, which is my hometown. So moved back to Reno about 10 years ago to start a bicycle messenger service there, which is still in operation today. And that was sort of the catalyst for Blackbird. I had some friends that were awarded licenses in Reno and reached out to me and said, your specific expertise or your company's specific expertise is really lacking in the cannabis space. You should take a look at it. So I pulled out like a little piece of binder paper and drew a diagram of what I thought might work as a cannabis delivery and distribution company, and kind of set out trying to affect that model with my co-founders, one of which has been my business partner for 10 years, and another which was a competitor of ours in Reno, kind of joined forces to start this company. So started with 4 of us in 2015 and have extended that to about 130 employees today in 2 different states, 3 soon. And it's been, kind of rapid growth, but really exciting to watch the industry evolve.
Awesome. And my background is I started a company before this called Be Quick Logistics, and what we did is built transportation management systems for beer and wine kegs primarily. And so it was dealing with a lot of paperwork just like we do here in cannabis, but automating business processes for common carriers. And we were essentially a third-party logistics company. So streamlining and scraping and dealing with a lot of paperwork, going fully digital. So that's my background.
For us at Indus, we have 18 brands total. So I think initially it started off as 2 edible brands, and then we envisioned a product portfolio. And the way that we looked at the product portfolio was we want to have a little bit something for everyone, specifically our dispensary customers. So the product portfolio strategy in basic, good, better, best, and in all the categories, in flower, vape, pre-roll, edibles, et cetera. So we try to cover all the bases. We call it a bingo card. That's where it started initially. Then we started distributing brands into that. Really, it's about serving the customer, I think, serving the dispensary, figuring out what they need, and then on the other end, providing the brands what they need as well. So currently, our business model is 2 different kind of options, if you will. One is distribution only, and the other one is full service, which is sales and distribution, and it's all powered with my background from Ease. We brought in a technology partner called Wave, so now we have a e-commerce Amazon-style marketplace that serves both brands and dispensaries.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're 3 quarters into 2018, first year of regulation in California. What have you learned over the last 9 months that has shaped your understanding of where things are now and how that's different than maybe what you might have expected, but shaped your understanding of where things are now and where they are headed? Anyone who wants to kick it off?
Sure. So I guess after the first 9 months, I thought we would have metric up by now, and we'd have a lot of automation between a lot of these transactions. So there's been a lot of manual processes, a lot more paperwork than expected. And then also, even on some of the enforcement side, or how lenient the Bureau has been, allowing people to adapt and learn. So I think that's something, and it's also an opportunity in the future as this gets more, I guess, there's unfairness with it. But then again, it's been great because we've had a slow ramp up, which has allowed us to adapt to the processes and get ready for the big bump that we're going to have in business when that turns on.
I think everyone thought Gen 1 was going to be the bellwether, and then July 1 was really what helped a lot of legal distribution companies, legal brands take off. Now everyone's worried about January 1 and how we're going to get ahead of that, right? Phase 3 testing, so those are some of the themes. I think the main thing to learn is this is becoming like a real business or normal business quicker than we all thought. I remember a year ago we could spin up a brand in a month and go to market and spend $5,000 and get all this, but now there's a lot more competition, a lot more funding in the space, so the competition's real.
Something that continues to be reinforced to me, and I think all the other panelists would agree, and probably everyone in this room, is that patience really is a virtue. We saw a slow rollout in Nevada and kind of expected a slow rollout in California, so have really kind of been able to sit back, prepare, and then assist our clients and the retailers that we service through this process, utilizing our experience from operating in other spaces. So yeah, it really is. It's just about being patient and kind of waiting as things come down the pipe and being agile to be able to deal with those things.
In terms of trends in the market, whether that be products, product mix, pricing, the amount of operators, both on the retail side, on the producer side, and how the buying experience changes, what are you envisioning for the next year?
It continues to amaze me how much people like gummies. People love gummies. If I could tell myself 5 years ago to invest in every gummy company in cannabis, I wouldn't be sitting here because I'd be on my jet. But I think we have a unique experience in cannabis, which is to be able to take models from other industries and further them sort of with sort of our own thoughts on product and offerings. Like it's a small enough space to be able to kind of build something unique and get it to market. So that's really been an exciting prospect for Blackbird and something that we hope to continue facilitating to our clients.
I think the dynamic has changed really between the, I guess, power dynamic quicker than probably the dispensaries thought. Dispensaries have all the power for the whole entire trajectory of medical cannabis and even into Prop 64. And then after July 1, I think it shifted to the distributor and to the brands. At the same time, the dispensaries are still trying to maintain their keystone markup, which is great. I guess, you know, those are our customers, we want them to succeed, but as I think that'll be interesting as that shifts out. Who loses ground first, right? The brand, the distributor, or the dispensary? The government, state and local governments definitely aren't going to lose out. So how do we work together throughout the supply chain to kind of make each other's businesses work? I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Awesome. Another trend that I've been seeing is on the capital side. How much capital has been flowing into this industry, specifically from Canada? And so seeing where these valuations are, and you know, we all anticipated that consolidation and things like that would happen in the future. I'm seeing a lot of it much sooner than expected. So yeah, that's.
Great, thank you. Well, welcome, Azam. We did some introductions, so I'll allow you the chance to introduce yourself and a little bit about Distru. Make sure the mic's on. And
Testing, hello.
Yep, you're good.
Cool. My name is Azam. I'm one of the co-founders of Distru. We have distribution and manufacturing software. We help distributors and producers track their inventory, manage their orders, and track all their customer and supply relationships through a single interface.
Great. And we've just been on the first question, so you didn't miss much, Azam. We basically talked about, you know, what are some of the things we've learned over the last 9 months, and how has that shaped where we're headed and where we think the industry is right now. So if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah. I think over the last, over the past 9 months, a lot of things have changed. We've seen that a lot of things will kind of hit people in a shorter time frame, so they'll have less time to adapt. But I think those who are best positioned to adapt and keep their organization flexible are most likely to succeed. And I think there's going to be more challenges ahead with lab testing and everything. So that's something that people really need to be prepared for. And on the legal side, I think, you know, there's still loopholes, so people need to be extra careful, and we can't really just think that just because the cannabis industry is growing that, you know, we can operate carelessly. So just kind of really being on point and meticulous about the whole operation.
Great, thank you. Okay, shifting gears, I want to talk about distribution partnerships. When you think about the clients that you work with, where you have the best relationship, whatever that means to you, what is it about that makes that relationship so strong? What is it about kind of the keys to success for a healthy distribution partnership?
Customers come in all shapes and sizes, so I think really getting to know your customers and their needs. So we've focused a lot on growth, right? And depending on the customer, some really need to be efficient with their capital. So having a clear understanding between SOPs with each other, those are good relationships and helping support their brand and their growth.
I think you have to like each other. I think that's probably the main thing, you know. You can talk business terms all day. We're all in a shifting sands all under us, so, you know, shit's gonna happen. So I think communication, each other's personalities, characters, and not even just the executives, it's getting the, you know, day-to-day people to like each other, I think is important.
At Blackbird, we talk a lot about compassion. It's really difficult, as most of you probably know, to be an operator in cannabis. So, you know, having a healthy amount of compassion for one another as operators in a space, I think is really, really important. So the clients that work best with us are those that sort of are understanding of the challenges that we face, and then, you know, in return, we try to be very understanding and compassionate about the challenges that they face. You know, one of the reasons that I got into cannabis was because I was tired of working for attorneys. No offense to any attorneys in the room. And we wanted to work with good people. You know, we wanted to hire our friends, we wanted to have fun at work, and we wanted to work for and with good people. So when we talk about onboarding a new client, like, it's not a given that we will do so. We want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for both parties, because it's really, really important that the distributor that you work with, is very interested in furthering your business agenda and vice versa. So, that's kind of a long courting process for us and has been very beneficial to our business and I think to everyone that we service.
Yeah, I'd echo everything they're saying for our clients and the way they work with their producers. And for us, I guess I could speak a little bit more about on the software side. There is like a sort of a vendor-client relationship ethos that matters, and that's really kind of what he was saying about communication. When we start onboarding a customer, it's really important, like we're also communicating, setting specific timelines, and we have to kind of demand things from the client as well. It's not really just about like, the client sets which dates we're going to do things. We're just really on top of them, kind of continuing to onboard them and helping them understand things. Oftentimes when we start working with a new customer, there's a lot of things in their processes which are exposed that they haven't thought about. And so it's a really kind of enlightening experience. And I think as long as we kind of understand that, hey, you're like technical partner, we're going to help you succeed. And then from the customer, they understand that, hey, we have certain things we need to do as well to help us, achieve our desired outcome, then I think things turn out pretty well.
Great, thanks. What about working with other distributors? Do you find that in your business you are working with other distributors? Is that commonplace, or what does that distribution network look like across California?
We love working with other distributors. It's funny, our COO, Chad, always talks about, if you're driving from Oakland to LA, you're probably at 7 a.m., you're probably in a line of like 40 white vans all carrying cannabis to LA, and I think like that's a model of inefficiency that has been addressed by other industries through like cross-docking and load arbitrage. So that's something that is really going to be important as the industry sort of matures. So we love working with other distributors. I mean, there's 400 distributors in the state of Nevada or in the state of California today. There is a large enough cannabis market to make all of those distributors very successful, as well as the cultivators and manufacturers that they serve. So, we're really of the mindset that, rising tide lifts all boats.
I like the Rise reference.
Yeah.
We love working with distributors, so one of our big priorities, and thank you, Lauren, for getting this through Senate Bill 311 this session, which allowed us and clarified that we could work distributor to distributor. We had a lot of pushback. I'll tell you that some distributors came and said, why would you do that? Why would you not just consolidate and require everybody to go through you and not, it's bad if you want to be the one be-all distributor. And we're like, well, we don't want that, right? We have a chance to reinvent what distribution is. We saw what distribution looked like and where the power was in alcohol. And so it's really exciting to be able to have more distributors, have aggregation centers across the state, and work together. So.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on that it's a cannabis industry, so I think it's part of our ethos to work together, share cups of sugar, even if you're competing, because we're trying to push this all through together and get this, legalized nationwide and normal.
All right, so let's talk about distribution margins. How distribution margins can vary based on the different services that each distributor offers, and the value that the person on the other end places on those services. So I want to talk about that. I also want to, if you could elaborate on why lowest price doesn't always mean the best, and the problem with kind of the race to the bottom mentality.
Awesome. Well, I'll start off by saying we didn't get into this business, into distribution for the margins, because we knew that was going to be super small. So it's a small margin game in distribution. In terms of racing to the bottom on pricing, providing these services, really getting customer support, the amount of interaction that we have and hand-holding with dispensaries is costly. And if you want to be able to pick up the phone, really service your clients, we need a pretty strong customer support team. So you do get what you pay for. We structured this around efficiency. All of us are focusing on growth right now and not really, putting the big efforts into just margins, because we all need to make sure we have that market share for you guys.
I guess I'll dive in a little bit to our business model in describing this. So going back from the retailer back, I guess the retailer would get the delivery. There's a delivery driver. There's the routing and the gas to get to the delivery. There's the car itself, whether it's a lease, the gas, the mileage for the driver. If it's over 8 hours and you're going to Eureka, there's potentially an overnight and overtime to do that. Then getting back to the kind of centralized warehouse, there's storage, there's insurance for the storage product. What else is there? Then the product, there's QA, there's the state compliance testing, there's potentially a final labeling process if you're, depending on what your process is for that. You potentially will be picking it up from the manufacturer, from the brand, whether that's a manufacturer or distributor. So it's kind of different pieces of that part of it. I guess you can call that logistics or fulfillment and delivery. There's also a huge part of customer service that comes with every step of that way and all the parts there. And then upwards would be some layer of technology that kind of helps that operate, whether that's customer facing or internal. I think that's something to build in. Moving up from there is a sales and marketing team. Everyone has a little bit of different models. I'm just kind of going through a little bit of the verticals. The sales team could be doing trade marketing just for the retailers. Then the brands do the brand marketing, or the distributor could potentially be doing kind of everything, right? I've heard of a distribution company that's actually going to only do sales and not do the fulfillment and use someone like us or Blackbird to fulfill. So that's kind of interesting. Everyone is just kind of rallying around different business models, so I don't think all distributors are the same. So I think as a brand, you should definitely want to figure out what your strategy is going in before you meet with the distributor. I think it's kind of chicken and egg on a lot of the conversations that I have. I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Tim flesh it out.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that, but when we think about pricing, the first thing that we talk about is access. And we always encourage everybody in the industry to think about access. And when I say access, I'm really thinking access for patients, access for, adults, responsible adults. Price point is what keeps the black market thriving and hurts our businesses the most. I'll spend money on gas and trucks and warehouses all day if I can bring the price point down on product to have an influx of customers into the market. So that's really, really important to us, is how can we keep our prices low so we can contribute to expanded access for everyone to, tested product and medication.
I'll just add one thing. I think some of the things that are intangible values that that distributors provide is, I guess, kind of on that accessibility to the distributor, and sort of the distributor being almost like a consultant to the producer. And same for us, right? A lot of people reach out to us for the same purpose. They have specific questions that are maybe related to the software or not related to the software, but they just need, sometimes they need specific connections to source material or anything. So just really, there's a lot that service providers will do for someone, and I think that's an intangible value that we don't necessarily charge for, but it's just something that's, I guess, part of our culture to be helpful.
That's a really good point on the kind of consultative approach that distributors take, and especially in a newly regulated market where I know we all spend a lot of our time educating both the retail side as well as the producer side, and that education actually goes both ways. But I think that cost has become a huge factor, not just for distributors, but everybody's business. An additional cost factor of just more people to help make sense of the regulations and also communicate them effectively throughout the company and externally. You guys are really good. None of you mentioned margins and percentages, but I really do want to have that conversation. If you don't feel comfortable talking about your business specifically, maybe you can talk about the kinds of, in the services that you provide, the range of what you're seeing, and if a brand was to do those things themselves, what would the percentage of their overall operating cost be? Is it kind of comparable to the cost of outsourcing it? Help us understand what these percentages really look like from a bottom line.
So, talking specific percentages, in Nevada, Blackbird charges about 1.5% margin. That is, we charge more than that in California, but that was the price point that the market was willing to bear in Nevada. That is break even at best for us in Nevada, and the reason that we set that price point was because operators came to us and said, we can do it for less than that. So we wanted to sort of meet them at that price point and prove that at scale, we could, through efficiencies, like make money at that level. So, it's possible to streamline your business in a way where everyone makes money. It is also important that everyone understands that every touch point in the supply chain is offering a very valuable service, and if we want one another to be successful, we should be willing to pay for those services at a fair rate. So yeah, Blackbird offers kind of two service levels, transportation only or distribution services, which would entail, storing product, quarantining it, sending it out for testing. We don't do sales and marketing on our clients' behalf. That's sort of outside of our business model. So, we don't have to affect any additional percentage points for those services, which allows us to kind of keep our price point a little lower, but then does rely on the brand to, be their own sales and marketing team, so.
We actually structured it very a la carte, so different brands that we work with, either some of them had their sales team and wanted to represent themselves, others just wanted us to drop off the product, they would deal with their cash collections. So we've structured it that way, so it's 2.5% for cash collections, for example. For products, we do 6.5%. If it's flower, it's 3.5%. If we're going to come in and represent your brand and open up doors for you and offer sales as a service, so that's getting your sales team knocking on new doors every day for you, that's an additional 10%. So you just start to stack your services. I've seen this range in, especially when you get into the full service, even up to 35%. We're nowhere near that, but that's what I've seen in the industry. So we let you choose really towards whatever fits your needs.
I think if you think about it as a brand, if you're kind of regional, if you have like 30 stores and all that, and you kind of want to keep it tight, I think it's manageable. But once you start looking at statewide distribution and cash management, multiple warehouses, 20 plus vehicles serving Eureka, Shasta, Tahoe, Truckee, and all the way down to the border, it gets a little more complex, a little more expensive. So I go back to the point on what your brand wants to do, where they want to go, what are their goals, and finding the right distributor for you. So for our company, we have two models. We do distribution only via the e-commerce website and on our existing kind of Indus infrastructure. It's 15% flat rate, non-exclusive. We wanted that to be very flexible and frictionless to kind of leverage the power of what we were doing. We were already spending probably close to the 15% mark to serve the whole state. Expensive rent, expensive warehouses, teams in both locations, et cetera. So we thought it'd be kind of incremental business, right? The trucks are already going there anyways, there's more room in the trucks, blah, blah, blah. So that's that model. The next model is full service for the service and sales and distribution and trade marketing. That's at 25%, and that's an exclusive relationship. And we kind of want to curate a portfolio kind of along the lines with a good, better, best in all the categories. So that's a little bit about our model and margins and percentages.
Great, thanks for elaborating on that. As you can see, there's a lot of different models from those exclusive kind of full service to more a la carte, and really it depends on also what your goals are as a brand, as a producer, if you even have a finished packaged ready product to sell, or maybe you're a cultivator that just wants to sell your product in bulk. It's a very different kind of distribution relationship. So let's talk a little bit about contracts and what kind of terms distribution contracts might typically include. And from a producer perspective, what should they be looking for in a distribution contract?
I mean, they should be about 15 pages long. I mean, they really range. I would say as a producer, manufacturer, cultivator, you probably don't, unless the relationship is a really great one, you probably don't want to see any exclusivity in there. Provide yourself some options, but, probably one of the biggest things that we, go back and forth with potential clients on is insurance and indemnification. So be very cautious about like the insurance levels that your distributor carries and what type of insurance they tell you that they have, and understand what is excluded from those types of insurance. It's very difficult to find an insurance that will cover, that has a crime policy that will cover really any type of crime that may put your product at risk. So just kind of understanding those pitfalls as you embark on contract negotiations with a distributor that does it every day is probably very important.
Sure. So on contracts, I'd make sure that it really is suited to fit your needs. Have clear outline of the expectations from both sides and the SOPs, so that you're going to get into scenarios. There's just no way you've got products that fail testing that we've got the heavy burden. If it fails, we have to either destroy it and or give it back to you for destruction. So we're constantly dealing with stuff like that. We have dispensaries that have cash flow problems, and so make sure that if you're coming on as with your distributor and looking at the contract, make sure that you know who's responsible for collecting that money. Make sure that you know where title crosses. So when the distributor takes title or ownership of that product, or if they don't, and whether they're responsible for any losses, when and where.
Yeah, I think kind of the buckets that always come up are the non-exclusive versus exclusive, a term, if that's part of it. I think payment terms is a big one, insurance indemnification, as Tim mentioned, and I think I want to touch on a few things. We have a lot of people coming out from outside of the cannabis industry. So one of the kind of consultants that helped us with our partnerships was pushing for, especially in exclusive relationships, a termination fee, which is kind of a hot button issue, I think. I think that's quite normal in most other industries, but not so much in ours. So I think a lot of that might be coming more soon for exclusive relationships. And on the exclusive relationship piece, I think there is an element of that's evil or whatever, but I think in defense of that, a company like ours has invested multiple years. Salespeople are expensive, relationships are expensive to maintain. So to kind of ask someone to hand over a book of 300 dispensaries with a non-exclusive 30 days out kind of relationship is I think that could have worked in the handshake days, but I don't think it's going to work moving forward. So I think there are a lot of things that distributors invest into kind of over time and things like that. So I think being able to see the value on both sides of the table is great. A good way to do that is start out with a term sheet, not the 15-page document, although you'll end up there with like a 2-page term sheet that are essentially the distributor's non-negotiables, the brand's non-negotiables, and then you become friends and work it out. You do business together.
And hopefully never have to look at the contract again, right?
I actually maybe have a question for any of you guys. Is there any sort of pitfalls around distributors white labeling flower in terms of kind of intellectual property issues that distributors should be mindful of? Because you can just like take a product and then, obviously you'll create your own product name, brand it, whatever you want. Are there any issues that can arise between like the IP that the cultivator might hold and how the distributor is trying to handle it?
I don't think much of the IP, I guess, transfers in the flower itself. I mean, obviously the product quality is, a result of their IP. But what it does do is it allows a lot of these brands that either had a shortage of packaging supply and can't get to market, or another brand that maybe had a little bump in the road and didn't have enough production to keep feeding their brand. So we can keep putting product on the shelves, filling the gaps when these brands have gaps, and keep selling product, get that cash flow to you.
Colin, I'm glad you brought up the part about the benefits of exclusivity and some of the reasons why, because in my last company, we had an exclusive brand representation model. And really because the stepping on toes with other sales reps in the same territory with the same accounts with your brand means there's confusion in the marketplace between two different people, different companies selling your product. Maybe they're selling it at a different price. Maybe they aren't equally knowledgeable about it. So I do think that if you are having a distributor fulfill the sales and marketing component of your business, at least having territory exclusivity is important to keep the message strong and not dilute the experience from the retail perspective. Okay, let's see. July 1st was our first big milestone of new regulations. And then January 1st. And then July 1st, we had the big crackdown on untested product. And I think we're all looking at January 1st, 2019 as the next big milestone, introducing phase 3 testing and also the launch of track and trace. So on the testing conversation, how is phase 3 testing going to impact you in your business and the relationship between producers and distributors? What do you think is going to happen to the market overall with this phase 3 test?
Well, phase 3 test is the heavy metals, additional pesticides. I think one of the challenges is that not all the labs have heavy metals testing equipment. I think if you ask probably all the top 10, 3 of them are getting it next week. The other 3 have it ordered, and it's coming in November. So I think that sounds a little tricky. Everyone's pretty confident about them, being able to survive, be ready. So I think we're probably all worried about that at some level. I think one X factor is the amount of capital coming in the space and what that does to the competition and, these kind of stories, rumors of pre-buying out lab time or whatever. So it's going to be interesting, although I think we're all going into it with eyes wide open now, so hopefully a larger group of us will be more ready than last time.
My concern for phase 3 testing isn't the pesticides and the cannabinoids on manufactured products. It's pesticides even on organic ingredients for gummies, for example. So we had a gummy manufacturer kept passing testing on the oil and the bulk oil, and then when we'd get the final product, we tested again, ready to go to market, and it would fail. So finally, we sent the ingredients off to the labs, and the organic sugar that they were utilizing in the gummies had more pesticides than we'd ever seen in cannabis. So that's a big concern of mine.
I would echo the sentiments of the previous panelists. I think that any sort of addition to operation, to SOPs for anyone in cannabis is going to create a bottleneck for a period of time. How labs and distributors handled the July 1st deadline, I think, is reassuring, at least to me, because the labs that we work with, we're pretty good at catching up and, staying on track. So we're kind of prepared for that and excited to kind of move through these hurdles so that we can get to a more stable place in the market.
I would imagine the additional testing is just going to create more friction for people. Heavy metals from water sources, for example. Also solvents that are going to be used. I think someone was telling me that Canada is about to ban hydrocarbon extraction in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm guessing these are the kind of issues that we'll all be dealing with. But yeah, I think people will need to prepare ahead of time, but it will hit them. A lot of people probably will suffer.
I just wanted to add to the track and trace piece. We currently have, I think, 5 job requisitions out for track and trace, so we think it's going to be a pretty monster task, especially for the transition. So I guess that adds to the distributor margin conversation and just kind of the overhead that is being put on us.
Yeah, that's a great transition into track and trace. So, each of your companies are pretty tech focused. There's a pretty strong technology undertone to revolving around your business. So, what have you been doing to prepare for the launch of Metric? What is your feeling about how the rollout will be, and what you're planning for to manage that, and also what you would encourage your producer partners to plan for?
I take a stab at. So definitely track and trace is something we think about pretty heavily. By the way, am I loud enough? I don't know. Okay. So preparing for track and trace and compliance is going to be really important, and probably will be like the key issue that many people deal with. I think you have to think about metric, and metric lets you make as many mistakes as you want. That's something to be mindful of. So really thinking about like who's going to be doing your facility audits. Basically you have to have your inventory updated every 24 hours. So who's going to essentially reconcile your inventory between your third-party software, your metric, and your facility? Then you're going to have things like who's dealing with your inventory logs, who's dealing with your visitor logs, how do you handle discrepancy errors? It's going to be shipping manifest errors, which are also, there's particular ways to deal with them. So I think, and when I really kind of think about traceability, there's maybe 4 parts of preparing for traceability that I could highlight. So the first part is to really audit all your data. And what that means is go through your historical record, verify that all your prices are accurate, look at the name of your products, the weights, and your units of measure. So the naming conventions, which are going to be set by the producer, the manufacturer, or cultivator will set the naming conventions. I think the distributor can also take a product and repackage it or something. They'll also be able to set the name, so which creates data normalization issues. But so audit is the first thing. Then second thing is to identify the sales velocity. You want to look at products that are just sitting around not doing well. And you'll want to kind of basically try to decrease that, because that'll lower your risk in terms of how many different package tags you need to manage. So the more package tags you need to manage, the greater your risk of making a mistake. The third part is organizing. So organizing all your physical inventory to prepare for metric. Every brand, flavor, potency, all of these will have their own unique, and production and harvest batches, they'll all have their own unique identifiers. So you want to make sure they're all sorted and stored in the right place. And then I would say the last part is the centralization. So centralize and standardize all your employee roles, knowing who's going to do what, like who does a facility audit, and making sure you have all that properly separated so that everyone is accountable for what they need to do. And lastly, I would just say, just shameless self-promotion, but having just really kind of thinking about what softwares you use, how that's going to be integrated with metric, whether you're using it yourself, whether you're using integrators, whether you're using kind of a system like ours, which will integrate. But really, the way we're thinking about it is people are going to make mistakes, and how do you deal with those mistakes? And just one last thing on metric is, you can't change something in metric. Like you can't go and delete something. So it's all all actions are stored in a timestamp ledger. So you'll want to make mistakes in your system before it gets pushed to metric. And so just kind of knowing how to deal with that is going to be really important.
Yeah, that's all really good information. I think, as far as metric is concerned, metric was one of the reasons that Blackbird targeted California as an expansion state. Nevada was the first metric state with a distribution license class, so we sort of saw that rollout happen. And I talk to operators all the time about that rollout. It caused basically a 6-month bottleneck in the industry. And while, operations didn't fully shut down, the state sort of gave a target date for implementation, and then they moved that date 6 months out, like 1 month at a time, because they saw that operators just weren't ready to comply. So, one thing that we're really advocating on behalf of is sort of this period of leniency, especially since the state wouldn't issue metric logins to temporary license holders. The fact that they will issue them to provisional license holders is great, but it's like any software. You have to get used to it. You have to practice with it. You have to be able to make mistakes until, you no longer can, and then at which point the state starts to audit. So I think it's just really about patience and practice with that software. The state hasn't even seen a completed product at this point, so none of us really know what that's going to look like. What I will say about metric is it is sort of simple in what it does. If you sort of take a high-level overview of metric and understand that all right, we're tagging plants and then we're moving them through the supply chain so that they don't get diverted, and that's the process that we're all participating in, it's kind of easy. It's like moving blocks around, but in a software. So yeah, it's just something to be patient with again.
I think all of us are certified metric integrators, right?
Yeah.
So all 4 companies here have integrated with metric directly. So what we did, since we didn't have metric in the state of California, is we flew to other states and got certified in other states and implemented and got, are testing our software in other states. Not all of us came from Nevada. And it's even different here in California than Nevada with the sampling procedures, where it's happening in our custody. And so units or products are coming in cases, and this is where it gets really complicated, right? Then the lab comes in and takes units out of random cases, and you end up with all these partial cases, right? And so that's going to be one of the probably the biggest challenges of then scrapping the units that went out for sampling in these systems, and then reassembling the cases and not losing track of any of that. So I think that's what we've done to prepare, and that's the challenge I'm worried about.
I'll even just throw in a little fun fact. So if you try to access your your inventory, your past inventory through Metric API, it will not let you access inventory packages that have not been modified within the last 24 hours. So what's going to happen is a lot of systems will be pinging Metric's API every like X number of minutes to try to keep a store of what the current inventory is. So you can imagine what kind of strain that might put on Metric. Just food for thought.
Oh, and the final thing about us all integrating with Metric, the point of it is so that we can reduce the amount of double entry that you have to do. So you utilize one system, and those of us, that I know we all have connectors as well. So if you're not having to do double entry in your accounting system as well. So simplifying your processes as well, just look for that from your distributor.
Great. Okay, we're going to wrap up with one question and leave a little time for Q&A from the audience. So my last question is, if you were starting your distribution company today, what would you do differently? And really for those who are embarking on either self-distribution or a new distribution business, what's your advice?
I mean, let me think. I'm thinking as I'm talking. So, I mean, what wouldn't I do differently? Is more probably a better question. I think it's a learning process for all of us. We are making mistakes. I would say that's maybe the biggest thing to look for in your distributor. If they tell you that they're perfect, run, because none of us are. We're all learning as we go. Like I mentioned, Metric is a perfect example. The state has not yet seen a finished product. So none of us know what this is going to look like. We can make assumptions based on other states, but the reality is we'll know what it looks like the day that we get it, and the state will probably require that everyone uses it the next day. And those that's okay. We'll kind of roll with the punches. Specifically, I think that I would get bigger warehouses. I would know that the Ford Transit is the best van on the market, and I would hire as many people as I possibly could, which is kind of what we've already done. Hire smart people and let them be smart. So yeah.
From my perspective, I guess when we got going, I had this thing, okay, let me get through July 1st, so it's 6 more months, right? And so what I would do differently is I would do, when your personal trainer, you're doing that final push-up, he's 2 more. Definitely have that mentality. Just know 3 more months, 3 more months, 3 more months. It's been over a year of 3 more months. And so I would definitely come prepared. It's a marathon. We're swimming to the end of the pool underwater, out of breath, and it's 10 more feet, and then the wall moves, right? So just be prepared for that. And then also, I would organize your data room. So all of your corporate documents, make sure you spend you get good attorneys. Don't get crappy ones. Spend money on attorneys and have that ready, because either you're going to get to a point that you need, to fundraise, and so have that diligence packet ready. And it's better to have it clean from the get-go than have to go back and clean it up while you're deep in business. So.
I probably would have brought technology on sooner. I think we started about a year ago. Probably would have started 3 years ago from the beginning. I think that would have been better. And I think we're now at a point where we have flexible business models, two options, non-exclusive, exclusive. I think before we were just in the realm of exclusive only and raw. So I think a flexible business model up front and kind of to the producers or brands in the room, more to the point of figure out what your strategy is, what your model is, then interview us up here and our other peers and find the right fit. So I think flexibility is key.
Yeah, I would, having worked with different distributors, I would definitely advise knowing what model you want to follow, whether it's kind of fulfillment only, whether it's sales and marketing. We noticed a lot of kind of young, scrappy distributors. They're like, yeah, we do a bit of this, we're going to do a bit of that. And I mean, while it may work just to kind of be a nice, it could be a sustainable business, but it's not going to help them get to the next level. I feel a lot of companies here are not just local small business, but these guys are aspiring to kind of go to the next level. So I think just kind of focusing on your model. I mean, we've seen sales and marketing distributors, eventually work with good brands, and then later they're the ones who nurtured the relationships with the buyer, and then later they get burnt because the producer they were working with gets their own distro license, and then all of a sudden just doesn't need them anymore. So just kind of keeping those kind of things in mind and focusing on what you're good at so that process can then scale, kind of like the way Blackbird's done. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're going to take some questions. Gentleman in the back.
One of the headaches since July has been unpredictable and slow turn times in labs. And that's mostly due to a lack of reconciliation between the demand that the producers have overall and the capacity that the labs have. You as distributors probably have better than anybody on what the demand is, what the coming demand is. So what can you do to help rationalize demand?
So for us, we have a quarantine room that has one area right now, and we essentially work with 5 labs, and we schedule them on every day, and depending on, some are good at edibles, some are good at other things. So it's really a jigsaw puzzle. I think some things that we could probably invest more in is not just one quarantine room, maybe 2 or 3, so we can schedule multiple. It's all the scheduling, right? And when the lab comes and does the random picking out of the pallet, they can only do 10 at a time, and they take an hour to do each one. So there's a limit on what they can do. I think it's just scheduling and coordinating, and I think it's almost an element of luck too on the jigsaw puzzle of the lab bandwidth.
I guess to answer I give the labs visibility, right, to anticipate how much there is. I think in the next quarter and next 6 months, we're going to have a lot more visibility into real stock levels at retail. And so as we have that visibility and we're really getting better demand forecasting, we'll be able to forecast for the labs. And there have been a lot of labs coming online, so I'm not really so worried about the big lab bottleneck. Most of us that have been working with multiple labs have secured service level agreements for turnaround times. And so if the labs don't meet those demands, then we'll move to another lab. But they've all been scaling their capacity as well.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Lauren. I think to echo Philippe, I think the visibility for labs into stock levels is hugely, hugely important. So yeah, I would definitely echo that, as well as sort of say, buying power is still important with labs. SLAs are very, very important. If Blackbird, similarly to these guys, works with 5 to 7 labs on a consistent basis, and if they can't turn around product in maximum 7 days, then we don't work with them anymore. And that could potentially be a hit for a lab. So I think 7-day turnaround times are should be expected, and then expedited times of 72 hours for a little additional payment. I think will become the industry norm. They are in other states, and I think that we'll see that here in California. A lot of money is flooding into labs, so they are scaling quickly.
That's good. We had a question here, and then we'll go to you.
Are you working with any beauty marketplaces like Canine or Canily, and how do you see their value in the ecosystem?
So this is definitely going to move to an omni-channel marketplace. I guess I don't know how long, right? The problem is a lot of these marketplaces are still being built. So in integrating with the marketplaces, unless they're versioning their APIs, we'll spend resources integrating, we'll connect to them, we'll have product on there, and then they'll make a change and break the integrations. So we're hoping that they stabilize their APIs. Definitely, we're all looking to put all the products on as many channels as we can. So, yes.
I mean, you teed that one up for me. So Blackbird is releasing a wholesale marketplace in Q1 of 2019. You know, that's always been part of our product roadmap. It's hugely, hugely important to be able to move product through the supply chain, not just in vehicles on the ground, but also through software offerings. So part of our, of our business plan from the beginning was to pair services with offerings at every touch point in the supply chain, because that's how you affect efficiency in ordering both as a consumer, as a retailer, and then moving product from wholesale. So look for that.
Any other Q1 things that you guys are doing?
Maybe an app.
Whoa.
All right, go ahead. What are six? You can hear that.
I think you have to own the customer relationship. You have to own the relationship with the retailer, whatever that means, and whatever model you end up choosing. Even if you have a full-service sales rep, I think it's important, especially with the key accounts. The retailer's everything. So, yeah. So don't just think even if you have a sales organization that's exclusive and opening all these doors for you, you still want to own that relationship.
I would say that there's a lot of relabeling that we've all been doing. So planning the packaging to easily relabel for distributors if the potency's off by 10% or whatever, many of the cannabinoids are. So yeah, make sure your packaging's ready for that. Make sure you're always in supply because it's hard to build a brand when you run out of stock. So try to always be in stock.
Wouldn't it be great if we had uniform packaging standards?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would add to that, be amenable to change. A lot of the brands that we saw be very, very successful post the July 1st testing date were brands that would go into retailers and pull tens of thousands of dollars off the shelves and replace it free of charge. And while that is a huge hit to the bottom line, it's a relationship builder that, it will last a lifetime.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
I'm coming from the beverage industry, so I'm really interested in the space. When you say exclusivity, is that category exclusive to certain products in the lineup? And then how many can you take? Because at some point you're probably going to run out of space and we're exclusive already in all the categories.
I guess exclusivity from the distributor perspective would be probably not necessarily for category, because from my perspective, we would want good, better, best within the drink category, but it would be exclusivity with us because we're marketing your product. We don't want to roll you out to 100 plus dispensaries and then kind of get that pulled from under us or have channel conflict. I think I'll add to that. Beverages suck to distribute. we have 3 different brands of beverages. We have refrigerated trucks. They're just heavy compared to a vape cart or concentrate. So I think make sure you have a distributor that is prepared for that. Having the equipment and ready for the warehouse space, all that type of stuff.
The shocks.
Yeah, CBD water is my least favorite thing to ever think about distributing.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks to our panelists.